What's going on, guys? Welcome back. We have a brand new year and a brand new season of Marvel Snap, and it's right up my alley with the cards that are coming alongside it. We're going to talk about Iron Patriot and the entire season of new cards coming to the game, our rankings, and our synergy. And then we're also going to be talking about what we think of all of them, which ones you should save up for, and the ones that are plug and playable or kind of fit into more specific decks. We're going to talk about that all today on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Alex Coccia for a brand new year and a brand new month of Marvel Snap. We got a new season to talk about, one of our favorite episodes each and every month. And we're also going to hold ourselves accountable for the stuff going on. So I am pumped for today's episode, pumped for the new year. How was bringing in the new year? Did you just get schnockered going into New Year's Eve? I think you were already drinking when I talked to you at like 2 p.m. over there. Alex, how did that night go, bud?
Well, first of all, like there's the time difference, right? So it's 2 p.m. your time and it's dinner time at our time. So there's like some wine during dinner and stuff like that. It was great. We have a family tradition where we go to one of my close friends and it's usually just our two families and the kids get together. We do the countdown together. It's actually one of my favorite days of the year because our kids play super nice with their family. And, we try to cook as much like interesting stuff and it's beautiful. And it's quiet. It's not like a loud party type scene. And, yeah, for me, it was absolutely perfect. It's exactly what I needed. How about you, buddy?
It was good, man. It's so funny. Like celebrating New Year's Eve used to be such an event for my wife and I. Would go out to like at somewhere, man, bar, club, rave, whatever. Back in the day. Now we've been doing like the last 2 to 3 years since having a kid. We do like a kind of a board game night between the two of us and drink and just have a good time. And then we go through like our phone and we go like in January of the year we're celebrating. And just kind of looked at the entire year in review, kind of like what we do with the month every month of the card. So it's always cool, looking back at our son, but then also at what we did that year. And it was good, man. It was a good time. And then I think you just did this. I have cleaned up shop on this computer to try to get its engines going again. The streaming. Dude, guess how much storage I moved from. So I got this massive hard drive to move everything. How much storage from my main creating PC do you think I put onto a new drive?
I bet you did 10 terabytes.
10 terabytes. That's honestly, first of all, think about how much that is. That's a lot, man. That is a good amount. 19 terabytes of data of like all my videos, all the rendered graphics and green screen. Bro, it's just and I like don't even know if I'm ever going to go back to it, but I'm going to save it, put it in there, maybe use it on the amount of times I remake a tier list template or something and then using an old one I could have just like reformatted is beyond me, but it's been fun, especially with Rivals being different than Snap, so I have different stuff going on. But it's been good, man. It's been a good year and a good start. Big goal guy, so excited to get that underway. I won my fantasy football championship, so feeling like a king as well. It's been good. It's a good start, buddy. It's a good start. But what else is a good start is really the season that we have going into for Marvel Snap. You guys know what we're talking about over here with all the new cards. Alex, what are we talking about on your side of the Snapchat?
Cozy, on my side of the Snapchat, we're doing our final rankings from the prior season. We're going to hold ourselves accountable. We're going to discuss each of the cards and see where they land in the prior season. We're also talking about our favorite cards of the last season as well. Lots of exciting discussion around that. And then, as always, our Snapchat mailbag.
Well, quickly, guys, pardon the interruption, but today's video is sponsored by Castle Duels, a card strategy game with tower defense mechanics that put your tactical skills to the test in fast-paced, real-time battles. Now, for the gameplay, something that stuck out to me is there's so many characters to pick from, over 30 unique different characters to build your deck. You have Cowboys, Angels, you have Slime, you've got Occultist, Risen. A lot to choose from, which makes the game fresh. You can download the game right now by using the QR code here on screen, or again, I'll put it all in the description below. Dude, I've got to say, to start things out, this is probably like one of my most exciting seasons because of the playstyle, because of the card design. It just kind of already... Listen, when I'm not content creating the decks that I play, you guys know it, Agent Coulson. These all have a little Coulson splash to them. And so I, for one, as just a player of the game, am excited. I'm excited to be playing with these cards and even more excited to break them down. We start off with Iron Patriot. If you guys don't know, 2 cost, 3 power card. This is our season pass card. Many of thumbnails I've made with this guy. I didn't think we'd get him in the game, but we have now. On reveal, add a random 4, 5, or 6 cost card. So there's 100+ different cards you can be added to your hand. If you're winning here after next turn, give it -4 cost. So you play him on 2. If you're winning after turn 3, you get yourself a massive discount of having a free card if it's a 4 cost, a 1 or 2 cost card, which is clearly pretty damn good. But how good, Alex? How good is this card? Let's start off with our star ratings before we jump into synergies. What do you think?
You know what? I'm leaning into the 4.5 range. I don't usually like doing the 0.5, but I think it's better than a 4, but I don't think it's as game-breaking as a 5 tends to be, like the way we saw like Surtur was and stuff like that. I think it has 5 potential, though. It's clearly an excellent card, but for me, I'm going to lean into the 4.5 range, channeling my inner Cozy snap there at the 0.5s. I just think it's really good. I think it's clearly a very good card. The amount of RNG, I think, is very notable. You just talked about it. The breadth of cards that can go from 4 to 6 costs and everything in between is pretty wild. Now, generally speaking, cards in Marvel Snap are good cards. Like, it's very unlikely you're gonna get something that's complete trash, right? It's very unlikely. And we're gonna be talking more about some of the synergies and stuff, but I do think that this condition is relatively easy to meet. So as a result, I'm pretty high on the card.
Yeah, so for me, it was between this and one other card, which one got kind of my card of the month. And I was leaning with you. I was like, is this going to be... I do think, though, this one ages the best, mainly because it's an independent card. It doesn't need a lot around it, doesn't need anything. It just does its thing, and I do think it's pretty damn easy to get its thing accomplished. You got 3 locations to pick between, go maybe far right, middle locations, a lot of cards to back up that synergy. And then you're just getting mostly just great play. We see Agent Coulson in the way that he works, and this is that, plus a little bit better. I mean, there are definitely the differences of the pool of cards being smaller and whatnot, but I think as a clear-cut card in the game, this is probably my favorite of the month, just because of the way I think it'll shape into Snap moving forward. And you're right, there's probably 10 or less cards, maybe even 5 or less, that you don't want or can't even use. Everything else is pretty gravy for the most part, especially in the decks that this guy's even going to be in and be involved with. Look back to Coulson and how he's played. That's what I like to do with Iron Patriot. So let's go ahead and talk about synergies with him, where we see him working out. We both obviously are very high on the card itself. And listen, obviously, this guy's going to fit into a couple cards that we've been wanting to have some more play again, wanting to get back. But if I'm going to start, I think a good place to start, Alex, outside of like just general randomness, is complement cards to winning that location. I think that's a good starting subject for him and a way to get us organized. So maybe we start with 1s, 2s, and 3s and look at those impact players, if you will. And listen, I'll hand it to you because I'm going to do some of the 2 costs, but I know 1 cost is you got some 1 cost that you're obviously going to want to play with this guy starting out. What do you got?
I do got a bunch of 1 costs, but I don't think you gave us the star rating, Cozy.
Yeah, I did. He's my favorite card of the month, 5-star. This is
5. You're giving him 5. I don't think you said 5 cards. You did say
my 5-star. Yeah, this is my 5-star.
All right, so Cozy going 5. In terms of the 1 cost, dude. Okay, so this is a bunch that I think are really, really cool. And right off the top, Hydration Robert. Hydration Robert's seeing a ton of play right now. Theoretically, your opponent can snap him out of the location, right? And I think that there's some 3 drops that can compensate for that if they make that type of play. But Hydration Robert's being played in a ton of different decks right now. And it's taken some time to get there, but it seems as though the 1/5 with the strong stat line and kind of like it's not the greatest ability, but like it has some utility both for your opponent and for you. The stats have just been speaking. I think that, you want to make those early turns matter. Hydration Robert can do that. And to a similar vein, someone like a Martyr, who is a little more reliable than Hydration Robert, because Martyr cannot be interacted with by your opponent. They can't snap it out, and it'll just cleanly win that location. So I think that's a good example of a couple 1-drops that could kind of do a number on it at the very least.
Yeah, and with this being a plug-and-play card-ish, and Hydra Bob being a card that can be played in any deck, it's like that obviously makes a lot of sense. And then it's cool, too, that, you don't even have to commit with that Bob. You can have him go to another lane if you need that, power to get him to move. So that's always nice to have that kind of flexibility there. For me, man, 1 cost, I think just naturally Quinjet is going to also work with most of the cards we talk about today. I think Quinjet's going to be a highlighted card. And so clearly Quinjet with Iron Patriot, if you don't even get that hit, or if you do, you get an additional cost off. And I think that is going to add some spice. But I think really where I see most of the spice start to kick in are the 2s and the 3s. Obviously, ideally you'd like to play this guy down on 2. But if we want to talk about some other cards, either follow him up on 3 or to play if you didn't draw him and you're hoping for the top deck, Alex. I think there's some definitely interesting options, if you will. So let's go through them, man. First of all, we bring this card up more recently than I would say for the last couple months, it did take a good hit. I think White Widow's probably the clear-cut favorite just for an easy way to get a location to win it out. You know, there's no way they're going to get this thing filled. If they are, they're really committing to stop that cost increasement. And so clearly, White Widow to me is a great setup into this. If you didn't draw it on time, or even if you did, you know, they start playing into it. It's like, all right, we'll take a -4 right to the face. And so I've got that one big. But also, if you play him down, you go into turn 3, Alex. The other one I want to highlight, plenty here, but the other one I want to pull up specifically is Star-Lord, dude. It's funny, we look at, you know, is he going to make the more plug-and-play decks? I think there's something like Medusa where you could plan it out in the middle a little bit better. But Star-Lord to me is really cool because you're inviting them to play into that lane. You're like, come get me, come at it. And I think Star-Lord's a cool option.
I like how our minds kind of went to different perspectives. Like when you asked me about the 1-drops, right? I was thinking about like, how do we win those locations? You were thinking about like, okay, well, Quinjet provides like that cost reduction strategy, which I think is huge, especially with some of the cards we'll be talking about momentarily as well. When it comes to actually winning the location too, yeah, I think the Guardians there's a lot to be said about the Guardians, right? If you want to stick around that, like Groot is a 3 cost that can be played directly after the turn 2, of course. You play turn 2, Iron Patriot, you play the Groot. I don't know if that's cope or not, it just might be, but Groot could potentially be a pretty solid play. And another costed 1-drop, I should say, would be like a Nebula. Because, I mean, Nebula's been seeing a lot of play right now, but you play Nebula down in one location, and then you play the Iron Patriot in another. Again, it's one of those circumstances where they can't do everything at once, right? And so your Nebula's going to tick upwards while you're putting additional power behind the Iron Patriot. And if you're going to talk about Groot, you can talk about Rocket and Groot.
That's what I was going
right?
next. Yep.
I mean, Rocket and Groot themselves, like that is a great card to play into the Iron Patriot location because it's all gravy. They're going to play in you and you're just going to love it.
Yep, and you get the power steal, and you get to move it. Not a lot of things can top it. And most of the time, maybe the first week, this is one of those cards that could get hard countered. Obviously, Mobius and Mobius. Bro, that guy, he always fades out after the initial counter that he does. And even after that, it's like, okay, whatever. But outside of that, it's like these decks that are kind of always in the meta aren't designed to stop this card that early all the time. And so, you know, outside of Gladiators slamming down, which obviously is not a bad one to follow up with, could kick you in the butt. But that's not a bad one. To me, you know, I did highlight Medusa. I think the middle lane strategy is way up there. You got that 2-5. That's not bad. Also, man, talk about it because I'm trying to think of like actual, like I thought Groot 2, obviously Rocket and Groot fit that a bit better. But it's like cards that I actually am going to play into that middle lane. The 2 that I thought as well is both Juggernaut and Negasonic. Two of them showing up in Deadpool. Just perfect cards that complement that turn 3. Hopefully you got priority because you picked where you want to play the Iron Patriot. And so you're looking pretty good there. Get the Negasonic down. But then Juggernaut's just that perfect card. You're adding power to the lane, pushing their stuff away. Couldn't be better. And is a perfect plug-and-play card. I love these decks that are going to be the shield decks, but I also love him. And why I gave him a 5 is because I think he's just, like Kate Bishop, a general good card and is going to fit into a lot of decks.
It's like you're reading my mind, dude. And I like these 2 cards for different reasons. First of all, I think Negasonic could potentially work here because you're playing a lot of cards. Like, listen, you obviously want to win the location with Iron Patriot. And as a result, the early turns matter again. We've talked about this so many times on the podcast where we want the early turns to matter again. And in this case, they most certainly will. And so therefore, it's very likely you're going to have something like Initiative. So Negasonic doesn't feel like as much of a risk. However, if you're strictly going for, I want to win the Iron Patriot location, there's nothing better than Juggernaut because Initiative doesn't matter, right? That card will get displaced. And the nice thing about it is provided you don't do something weird like play into their 1-drop on turn 2 with the Iron Patriot, there are very few cards in this game that outstat 2-3 straight up and then can outstat a Juggernaut on turn 3. Like what? Like I guess Maximus? If they play Maximus into your Patriot or something, but if that happens, give them the win. They deserve it. You know what I mean? So I think that like Juggernaut is a very straightforward, clean way to win.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we talked about cards that are going to set up and help you win. There's so many also that can just help synergize with this in the first place. 3 costs, by the way, there's so many cards we could talk about because there's a lot that are built to help you win a location or whatever it might be. This is spoiling a little bit of my favorite card of the month and its cost, but I got to bring it up. I think this is such a really cool position for Frigga in the way we kind of talked about this when she launched. We thought Frigga was going to be a card that got better over time, especially more of these cards that You know, I think Anti-Venom was like, let's try it out. But now we're getting more of these kind of cost-reducing cards that work, and the play line will be interesting. But even just playing down Iron Patriot into a 3-4, get a copy of the Iron Patriot, get to play him again, kind of cool. I mean, getting that's an effect you definitely don't mind having twice, right? Clearly. And I think even in the next month, there's a card that like repeats on reveal abilities. Maybe it's only for one cost, but either way, there's locations that do that. Like getting multiple Iron Patriots obviously is something that you don't mind. And I think Frigga is just a good statted card with that 3-4 now too.
It's so funny because when Frigga came out, I actually liked her. Like I tested her, I liked her. I thought it was a decent card. Frigga going to a 3-4 was actually something you had called, believe it or not. I do remember that conversation specifically. And she feels great. She has a home in Little Movers right now, which has been great. But I do think that she can have more of an impact in other decks. And I think that the way that Marvel Snap's being played, especially with the cost reduction of the Iron Patriots card going to -4, like you don't lose that much tempo playing the Frigga on turn 3 because of the cost reduction. Even if especially if you have like a Quinjet on board or something like that, you're gonna be able to make use of those cards, which is kind of wild to me, right? It doesn't feel as slow. Like, of course, it's a slower card, but the payoff for something like an Iron Patriot might most certainly be a payoff. It might be worth it, so to speak, right? Another thing I want to just mention too is you mentioned Mobius and Mobius. I had some thoughts about that. There's so much conversation anytime we talk about a new card. Every single Snapchat where there's a new card, which is every one of them, people always say, well, I'm just going to bring out my Red Guardian. I'm just going to bring out my... Like, someone wants to poo-poo on the party all the time. And I do think that Mobius and Mobius is capable of doing that in Iron Patriot. There's no question about it. However, it's also a deck that's going to be focused on putting stats on the board. It has some play-around mechanics. I think it's not going to be the end of the world. But also, if you are going to be playing Mobius and Mobius, I don't think you just throw Mobius into whatever deck you want. I think that Pixie could be a very good counterplay to Iron Patriots during this launch week. Pixie, Mobius and Mobius, and those types of decks, I think could do a number on this card in launch week. I just want to kind of bring that up because I think that a lot of people focus on just the counterplay, but not necessarily the deck archetype that could potentially be one. So if you're a free-to-play player and you don't have Iron Patriot, that might be a kind of way you can go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's funny you went there because, I was going somewhere different than just the Mobius and Mobius as well. My head went to Discard. Discard starts off fast, overstated cards, does well, and one of the biggest ones on there is Gambit. And you want to bet where these people are playing all of their cards on one lane. And so Gambit has way more targeted value than typical. And I think just flat out Discard is another one that works there. And I like that you brought that up. There's so many decks that aren't just the obvious solution to it that work, and so this card is definitely there are ways to counter it, but I do think as we move away from its week and then even more so its season, it's going to be even better and better because this guy, I don't know if this is going to be like the ultimate meta deck, but I do think it's going to be just a competitive card deck that does work, and namely with some of the other cards we're going to be talking about here in a moment in the shield category in the month of it. Anything else? I mean, obviously we might as well bring up the conversation because this is going to come up one way or another, right? How long, we've been doing this 2 years, Alex, 2 years plus now, a few months. And we used to always talk about one beautiful card all the time. And then we didn't. And then we did it for how long? I mean, forever. Devil Dinosaur. Will he be back? Will he be worth playing again? It's certainly a case because even if you don't get the discount, you get another card in your hand. And obviously other cards we're going to talk about today do synergize with it. Does the devil come back in dinosaur form, Alex Coccia?
I hope so. I mean, when we go back in time to some of the earliest Snapchats, was this not the card I talked about nonstop? Was this not my favorite card in Marvel Snap? Was this not my first God Split I ever got in Marvel Snap? Yes, Devil Dinosaur. I am a true Devil Dinosaur enjoyer. I've watched Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur at Disney Plus. I thoroughly enjoy it. My kids don't even like it. I like it. I am a Devil Dinosaur fan. I like to make a comeback. And what's funny is in a lot of my like pen and paper kind of like ideas for early decks for the different cards we're going to be talking about today, I'm not convinced. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but some of my early archetypes, I don't know if Devil Dinosaur actually makes the top of it. Like, I think that like it's going to benefit, but it's so far in the gutter right now. It feels like it might need something else to climb up. Because we're going to be talking about Victoria Hand and some other cards momentarily, but I do think it's obviously a huge benefit to Devil Dinosaur, but I just wonder if it's too high of a hill it has to climb. You know what I mean, Cozy? Like, it's so far back that it really needs to turn on the jets in order to even get close to becoming meta relevant again.
Once upon a time, This was a 3-cost card, and it is now gone. Not now gone. It's been a 5-cost for a long time. Again, not to call out my own video, but if you guys haven't seen the kind of busted cards of all time in Snap, go check it out. There's some crazy changes in some of these costs. And Devil Dinosaur, I think, shocked. There was one in the comments that, like, people couldn't believe that this guy... I used to play Devil Dinosaur and Lockjaw deck, and it's like, man, how times have changed in Snap. But, yeah. So Iron Patriot looking good. A lot of good synergy around it. A lot of fun play. I think there's cards that we can continue to talk about with it as we move forward. Cards that you can get from it real quick, I think is cool. 100+ cards, Alex. There's a lot of different options. It's wasteful to be like, well, if you get this card, because there's so many options, but clearly tech cards are going to be good. A lot of 5s, most of the 5s. And I would say the majority of 6-cost cards are fine options with only a fraction of those being bad.
There's one thing worth mentioning too, talking about getting bad cards. Theoretically, you get the card before you have to discount it. So if you get a card like a Taskmaster, you're like, bro, I'm never gonna be able to play this. That means you just don't have to commit to the Iron Patriot location. Yep. You know what I mean? You get the card first, and then you have to earn the discount. And if the card you get, you're like, man, this is useless, just don't go for the discount, or just do it anyway. But you know what I mean? You don't have to commit to it at that point. You have that decision making available to you.
Yeah, like I'm glad you brought this up. I had that on my notes in the sense of like, you get to weigh how important that card is to you, right? So like, even if it's not a dumpster fire card, but it's something that you're like, I can make it work in the game plan. Like, why not? Like, let's say it's a devil. Well, that's a bad example. Let's say it's like a Ronin. You're like, I don't really have a lot to feed this card. You're like, I can throw a bone into that lane again. Or if you're seeing your opponent like start to, go all out, and then you're like, okay, man, let him have it. He's going to play again in there. We all know it. I might as well play into one of these other lanes, right? I totally agree. I think that's a cool side piece of this card. And listen, 2 cards come out same week. It's always chaos. This one, every now and then, we have things like Hope Summers and Red Hulk come out. This week's a pretty strong one, too. We have 2 really good cards coming out in the same exact week. Victoria Hand, 2-cost, 3-power card ongoing. Your cards created in your hand have +2 power. This is a monster of a card, Alex, and I think a relatively easy one. For star rating. Before we jump into everything, what do you think?
So this was originally going to be my 5-star, and I'm leaning towards it. I think that Iron Patriot might be in more decks overall, but I think Victoria Hand is going to be in the Iron Patriot decks, probably. There's a good chance that happens. I just love this card. I want to give this 5. I'm going to say 4.5. I don't like doing this, man. I don't like this whole 4. No, I'm going 5. I'm just going 5. I'm going 5. I was going to say 4.5, but I'm going to get committed. I'm going to just commit here. I'm going 5 just because I like this card, and I think it's going to do a ton for the archetype. I think that we've been saying it over and over again, that Marvel Snap's design team has been trying to make more archetypes viable in order to make the actual gameplay feel more fun. And this is an archetype that needed something. The whole shield hand generation archetype needed something. Why? Because they killed Loki. When they killed Loki, they killed that whole archetype, and they had to go to the drawing board and say, okay, we need Agent 13 and we need all these cards to be relevant somehow, right? Maria Hill was relevant in Wiccan decks, and that's cool, but everything else felt completely useless. Even Coulson really largely felt kind of useless. The Victoria Hand is going to really bring that all back. And so this might be a 4-star card in actual performance, but it's a 5-star in my heart. You know how we have those every once in a while, Cozy? It's like, you know what I mean? I think Iron Patriot's going to be better, but for me, this is the card I'm most excited about. Well,
listen, it's a board-wide effect on a 2-cost. It's really good, and a card you don't have to play on 2 at all. I think that's so strong for her. She reminds me of something like Morbius. Sounds funny enough, but you look at Morbius and what he does to that deck, and it's this over-the-top for an archetype. We actually talk about this all the time. Each archetype has this over-the-top card that really propels it, and, that's her weak point. She's got to be in these decks that focus on it, and that's a little bit of a bummer. However, most of the time, you're getting significant value from Victoria Hand, and let's just talk about it. The playstyle alone is why I love it. I think it's so cool to have this, give your randomness a good shot. It's what I wish Airsham was outside of the energy cheat. Super fun interactive play here. You're getting like a 2/7, 2/9. You're getting a really good card. Majority of so it's like Morbius, right? Like Morbius is a great card that's a complement card to his archetype, and so if we would give him a 5-star, which I probably think we would. I mean, it's tough. I'm going to give her like a 4.5. This is the card under Iron Patriot for me that I was talking about going back and forth in between. But I do think she's clearly very strong as an ongoing card. We've got a lot of card generation outside of the shield archetype. but this is that missing puzzle piece that we've been waiting for the shield archetype. We've kind of had a trickle effect of these cards that may boost up the shield archetype. You know, we would make full thumbnails for Nick Fury when he got boosted. Nothing seemed to do it, especially as you just said, Loki, Arishem, those really put it down. But there's so much more outside of shield, and that's what's exciting. I think there's more outside of that to talk about today. To name the obvious, Maria Hill, awesome, right? Agent Coulson, great. And then you got, Nick Fury. But you also have others, and let's focus on those as well. And the one that I want to bring up is just good old Sentinel, right? Good old playing down the card on curve, 2-3, getting it with the 2-5. That's crazy town. And it's into that that's where I see Devil Dinosaur working into those as a nice big vertical card. And then you go wide with all the Sentinels. I mean, dude, it's awesome. I love it.
It is awesome. Sentinel actually getting some love is crazy, to the point that when I was kind of writing my notes and stuff, we had that collector's, what was it called? Not collector's chest. That's the other thing. You know, when you get to buy the variants, it's like the collector's vault, right? The vault.
Collector reserve. Yep.
Yeah. But anyways, so with the vault, I actually got the Jim Lee Sentinel, and I had lamented over missing that, like, for the longest time, right? I got a lot of variants I like, but there's been a couple variants, like the Flaviano Bishop, where I'm like, I'm going to pay the money for this variant. Like, I know I'm being stupid, I'm going to do it. And that was one of them, and it was just too expensive for me. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And it came into the vault, it was like 1,400 gold or whatever, and I'm like, I got to do it. I've always regretted not having this Jim Lee Sentinel. So I got it. And then I was looking at this card. I'm like, yes, I can use my Jim Lee Sentinel. My moment has come finally, because it's amazing. And I actually like the idea of the way it's balanced, that the first Sentinel is going to come back as a 2-3, and then it's a 2-5 in your hand. I actually kind of like that. It's like the first Sentinel, you don't get the payoff, but then all the other ones you get the payoff with. And you kind of alluded to it again, or prior, I should say, with Victoria Hand, you could play Sentinel on 2, and then you could play Victoria Hand on 6. Because it's an ongoing effect, if anything, playing it later in the game protects it from the Enchantresses and the Rogues and everything else, right? Your Sentinels can just pop up, which is awesome. And it gives you some snap equity because your opponent might not be able to predict a play like that.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, that was the one I wanted to highlight because I love the idea of, over time, way back when Devil Dinosaur, that was its best friend because you have all this wide value. And listen, it's no... I think it's no secret. Probably the one of the biggest winners of this entire month that we're going to bring up a lot today too is Mystique. And what I think is cool is obviously we knew that Devil Dinosaur into Mystique was cool. And then you could do Mystique with Coulson and it had this huge uplift. What I think is awesome now is you can have this thought process of either you can play them both on 5, both Victoria and Mystique. But I like the idea of playing maybe Devil Dinosaur on 5 and then on 6 you're like, okay, do I have more widespread cards that I want to, play her down and then Mystique? Or do I want to play Mystique and get the Devil Dinosaur and go tall? Like, I love being able to instantly go wide or vertical. Very cool interaction. But one that I want to highlight, because I think it's safe to talk about now that we have Victoria Hand in the conversation, Iron Patriot, I wanted to mention him, is Wiccan. Because of Shield and because of Wiccan decks and how you want to curve these out, I think this could be a huge winner because you're getting the energy to play the extra cards that you're getting. You're getting guaranteed curve most of the time with the way Shield plays. I think Wiccan's cool in the formula here.
It absolutely is. And I can absolutely see a deck that runs Wiccan, Maria Hill. I don't even think you need Quicksilver because I think you're going to run enough, with Iron Patriot in this deck mixed in. I could see the Wiccan Iron Patriot shell coming together to be one of the top archetypes of the launch week for sure. I think it's a definite good call out. And something else that's worth mentioning too is that this is one of the few times where I looked at this Spotlight Week and I was like, damn, this is actually a pretty good Spotlight Week too. I think we'd be remiss not to mention that. Grandmaster, this has been a card cozy. It's Grandmaster's time, baby. It's time that we actually kind of speak the truth of Grandmaster. And finally, the reason why I bring this up is Kate Bishop. Talking about a synergistic card, Kate Bishop is in the Spotlight cache. And let's be honest, second dinner, yes, you need to do this more often. There have been circumstances in the past where you've had cards where, you make the Spotlight cache feel like a package. I think that's a great approach. And this is a good example of that. Because in theory, if you really want to huff the hopium, hey, listen, I'm trying to hit all the check boxes here right now. If you got to huff the hopium, you can actually play Kate Bishop into Grandmaster. And then now you got tons of stuff in your hand. And really only the Acid Arrow doesn't account for the buff that, that Victoria Hand's going to provide. But even still, man, like, you got a lot of options there, a lot of power, and all those cards, with the exception of the Aster, are going to love the fact that Victoria Hand is on your side.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Kate Bishop highlighted on my side. I mean, how do you not? Acid Arrow, because it's ongoing, doesn't matter. Great, cool, you get the best card of the bunch. Or now you're kind of pulling for the other cards to work as well. So you're just getting so much power generation off of really not doing much. Kate Bishop, huge plug-and-play potential anyway, so that works out. Love that out after what a stinker of a December Spotlight mess, we get something that actually correlates with the card. Feels good. Thank you, Second Dinner, for doing that. But also just like pure base, like Agent Coulson, loved him as a card, what he does, and now getting that extra power for all of your cards is like what I see this deck doing is you're using, obviously Victoria to get a base power going, and then your real win conditions are almost in the cards that you're generating and hoping to get out of these with Iron Patriot, with Coulson, with Maria Hill, whatever it might be. And that's exciting. I think that's really fun and a pretty unique way to play the game. Some others, obviously we do have things like Mirage that generate. Penny Parker just came out. That's going to be cool for the energy boost, as well as getting a little bit on top of a movable card. Kind of so weird. Depends on how you play it out. But one that I want to highlight as well is the Hood. I mean, listen, bro. -3. Now you got your Demon that's spiking up as a 1-cost card with +2 power on top of it. That's a big time vertical leap and easy play that you can have as that surprise play at the end. Talk about saving Demon, Victoria Hand and Mystique all at the last play of the game. That's a massive swing, and I think it's kind of exciting.
It is exciting, and it's kind of cool how like some of these archetypes that haven't necessarily been seeing a lot of play kind of getting some love, and like I guess the next natural place to go would be something like discard, because the swarms, like now you might be able to see like a discard swarm zoo approach, because each swarm is now going to be a 0/5, which is insane. And it's not the last time we're even talking about swarm in this conversation here, because there's another card that's going to want to deal with that. But swarm could be potentially insane. And if you want to stay in discard, I'm not quite sure what that deck looks like yet, but Helicarrier, like think about it. Helicarrier generates an entire hand for you. It's kind of crazy how that works. And if you get like a Quinjet into Victoria Hand, into like Sif, blow up the Quinjet or blow up the Helicarrier, and then you're getting this massive buff hand of cards. Yeah, it's all random, but come on, man. There's got to be something in there.
Well, we've seen our days of collect your discard being competitive. It's worked in before, obviously it works its way out. I think Helicarrier is always the fun build and eventually works itself out. But again, I don't see this deck being the best deck, but I also think it's A, super fun, but B, competitive as well. And that's what's great about it. I think that if she gives that huge burst to that style of play, which is desperately needed. And also I think it's going to prep a lot of people for draft whenever that does come out, because it helps you kind of think on your feet and figure things out. And so clearly good synergy between Victoria and Iron Patriot. A lot of cards that can, give more cards, Nick Fury, Snow Guard, ones that I've kind of forgotten at this point, right? We kind of moved past because they just don't have a good place, in the meta. One last one, I think you're thinking of it too, but there's one last one that, definitely there's a form of it every season. We like to come up with it. We used to say this card's name a lot on the, it was like a token that we would say on this. Any idea who I'm talking about?
Oh man, it's so funny because like when you're saying the token, my mind directly went to Hope Summers, but it can't be Hope.
It's the double up Moon Girl, right? Like how
many
times
Moon Girl, baby, there it is. Got the new animation and everything, baby. Haven't seen that very often.
The Moon Girl double up deck. There's always some double up deck floating out there. And listen, hey, now your cards are getting that much better. Really cool stuff and synergy that we could see out of this. And a lot of cards in here that you don't mind making twice. Even stuff like Iron Patriot. What do you think about Moon Girl?
You know what's so funny? I had this flashback of like, there was like maybe 2-3 months where every single Snapchat you brought up Moon Girl.
Yep. Like
without failure. And like, I had given up on her, but you maintained hope. She even got buffed. Do not forget, Moon Girl was a 4/4, got changed to a 4/5. I don't say recently, but within the last several months, right? Definitely. And the last time I tried Moon Girl, I actually tried like this Moon Girl High Evo Spider-Woman deck with Abomination. And it was, I was going to say it wasn't bad, but I think it was bad, to be honest with you. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, Moon Girl with Victoria Hand makes perfect sense. I still wonder about Moon Girl's forecast. And with Zabu making a bit of a comeback here, like Zabu's definitely back, and not because Zabu's good. I still think Zabu sucks as a card. It's just that we have so many good 4-drops. You're laughing, but come on, man. Zabu's not good. It's the 4-drops that are so good. You know what I mean?
Which
and I
makes
think that
good.
Moon Girl is, yeah, I guess it's true, but like, yeah, you know, I guess a little bit. But Moon Girl, I think, could have potentially a spot there because she is a very natural thing. The only thing that I found tricky with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur based decks, because yeah, she was a cool play on like turn 6 to like pump your hand and pump the dino and stuff. But earlier on, if you're running like Mirage and all this other hand gen, like your hand's too full anyway. You know what I mean? You're often only copying the leftmost card and then not drawing a card after.
That's why you get Makari in there, man. Get the Makari in there, double copy, send them both out. Hey, I did Makari action with Surfer this last week. It was like, oh yeah, this is a card. This is a fun one to play as well. So yeah, we got a good Victoria hand coming. We're going to keep things moving along, but definitely both solid cards to start off the season. Starting the year off hot compared to Scar and Kyera from last year. Remember that off the top of my head. We go into Moonstone. Moonstone, 4 costs, 5 power card, ongoing, has the ongoing effects of your 1, 2, and 3 cost cards here. Interesting. Very interesting card here. Now, obviously, here means you got to be playing it on the location where the other ones are at. But there are some very unique interactions that you could play with this. And what do you think of Moonstone?
You know what? Originally, this is crazy. This is the first time I've ever done this. I'm using all these 0.5s. I'm leaning towards the 3.5 range. I almost want to say 4. Only because I think that, like, I don't want to blow synergy right off the top, but I think Mystique might single-handedly bring this card to 4.
Yeah. And
we'll talk more about that later. I lean towards the 3.5 range. I think that's what I'm going to lock in here, Cozy. But I have hope for this card. I think that this could potentially be a interesting card, even with Victoria hand that we just talked about. Like, I think there's a number of different synergies here available, which we're going to go through. But I'm optimistic, but at the same time, I think that this might be not as impactful as some of the others potentially.
I'm going right down the middle with 3. Yeah, I think that this is a very feast famine card. You got some cool synergy of awesome things and potential that can happen. It's, you know, obviously it being one location and they know they have to do that because things can get out of hand pretty crazy. But the reason I want to go above 3 is if you think about it, obviously her stat line is going to be well over a normal 4-cost card. And you know, that alone makes you want to put it much higher. This is the token card of every season that we say we need to see play out, because I can see this one being an amazing card and also falling flat of awkwardness. And so old Cozy would probably hype this one up pretty far, pretty high. I want to pump the brakes, want to see how it works a bit. And that's hard for me to say with what I think is an easy synergy to go into. Let's talk about them together. You brought up Mystique, but, you know, obviously for me, Patriot, right? Love Patriot decks, always trying to come up with a new Patriot deck. Clearly looking at the ongoing cards, that's one of the biggest winners of it. But you bring up Mystique, who can obviously copy Patriot, and then you could play this all into one lane, and then you have just enormous Patriot. I mean, you win the game. You're going to have so much. Just playing a Doom after that, you win, right? Like, there's so much coverage. However, what Mystique is the card to talk about, guys. And you might be puzzled. Why Mystique? Yeah, you copy Moonstone. Copy something like a 5 or 6 cost card, and all of a sudden you can make that a 3 cost card with Moonstone. That's the winner, yeah?
No, 100%. Like, Mystique allows you to skip the rules. It rewrites the rule book for what Moonstone is meant to do. So, like, all of a sudden, you have these ongoing cards, and Mystique comes in as an onslaught. You know what I mean? That changes the math a little bit, right? And that's kind of why, for me, it's like Mystique is the most interesting, because, like, what if you copy Onslaught? What if you copy Omega Red, right? There's all of these interesting choices that can be made. Now, I know people are already typing, and I don't want to ruin the engagement, but if you're typing about Enchantress, yes, you're right. Enchantress is going to be a thing. We know that, right? But overall, I do think that the Moonstone has the potential to actually set up some serious combos. And it's so funny. I can't wait for the surprise Ultron video. I really can't, because I think that Patriot's a huge hit for it. It's a perfect hit for it, right? It writes itself there, especially with the way you want to play Patriot. You often play Patriot where, like, you're kind of a singleton lane almost, because you want Ultron to have the coverage, the reach, right? Does it make you a little susceptible to something like Enchantress? Maybe, right? But guess what? Who cares? Yeah. Because, like, you putting up so much power anyways, and there's a good chance that if they're committing the Enchantress on turn 4, they might not be able to actually counterplay the 1-2 bots flailing the entire board afterwards, right? One thing I will say though, Cozy, is that there's a couple cards I've been thinking about. I mean, this is a very patriotic season, As a Canadian, I feel patriotic for America. And I was thinking about Captain America. And I was like, can this make Captain America legit? Mr. Fantastic. Can it be legit? And I'd be interested in your take on that, because I wonder if it's still just cope. Even with Moonstone, I just don't think Moonstone's enough for Captain America and Mr. Fantastic.
So for Fonta, no. For Captain America, maybe. I think so. I think we brought him up whenever we first initially talked about these cards. I was like, hey, I think this has a shot, because just look at the synergy across the board. Let me get to that in a moment. Patriot, one last closing note on that is that Ravonna is one of the other ones that just is a huge highlight card. And I love Ravonna into Patriot Mystique. So, like, you have so many options to go off of that, and then you can really change your game plan. So I think that just naturally is going to work. As far as Captain, I think Cap might work. I do. Like, Captain, you know, it's funny you went there instead of, you know, Cerebro, because I was trying to think of Cerebro with Cap. Like, how do you make this thing work out in a way that isn't messy? And they made it a lot tougher, that's for sure. I think those cards are fun fits. I don't think they're going to actually work all the time. Maybe like a Spectrum build where this thing could just have easy curve synergy, you know, potentially happen. You know, you got the ongoing card. 4, luckily for a lot of decks, is a weird cost slot. Like, there's options there, but it's you know, typically you're playing Gwyn pools and Galactus, like things that just have big, wide spread plug and play energy or effects. So I don't know if those legendary cards are going to come into effect. I do know we're getting Mr. Fantastic this season in Marvel Rivals, and I can't wait to play Mr. Fantastic. That's going to be good in a game. Like, it's going to be fun. But I don't think he does come back and snap. I think, dude, that this card is going to be best in those Patriot decks and in Zoo low-cost power decks where you're looking to just fill up lanes with cheap cards that have the ongoing effect and that you can continue to multiply, like the Ant-Man, like the Dazzler. That's where I see this card winning the most.
Oh, 100%. And like even things like as you said, like Ant-Man, Dazzler into a Zoo type deck that uses a lot of ongoings, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want to do, right? Another interesting thing, you brought up Ravonna. I think Ravonna might be underappreciated. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about Ravonna. I'm so glad you brought it up, because with Ravonna, with Moonstone, Iron Man's a 3, Mystique becomes a 1. Mystique becomes a 1, Cozy. Like, Mystique as a 1 means you can put her anywhere. Like, it's Ronin Mystique turn 6, Devil Dinosaur Mystique, whatever you want, because she's a 1. It's kind of actually insane. Gore becomes a 4. Like, things get so discounted and the combo potential becomes so high. One thing I will mention as well is you do bring up Cerebro, and I had this thought of like, can Cerebro work? And I think that Patriot's going to be a much more natural one. I think Cerebro, there is potential. But for me, I think that that Patriot's going to be a little more natural there. Another thing worth mentioning, though, is Quinjet. If you're going to be doing like these hand generation style decks, if you Quinjet Moonstone, suddenly you're starting to cook with major discounts.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Quinjet on Iron, Patriot on 1. The reason I was bringing that up is like, just think about what we've talked about. All these cards getting +2. Then they also are 1 less, right? You got a Loki thing happening all of a sudden. And then Moonstone can amplify that even more so. And obviously, Victoria Hand is a ongoing card, so that's going to be one of the most clear-cut fits to go with Moonstone. Super cool card, too. The art, by the way, all that highlighted. Good stuff there. I think this is the whoa card that we'll have to see how it does work out. A lot of interesting things. Glad they kept it 3 and down. Also, instead of Enchantress, I just think Super Scroll is the way to just hard counter this easily. No question, because the rest of their deck's ongoing, too, most likely. So just capitalize on that to the fullest degree if you don't want to go the Enchantress route. But obviously, this card will be heavily countered on release.
What happens if you play your own Super Scroll and then you Mystique Super Scroll into the Moonstone?
Yep. So you're able to... What's cool is that's crazy, number one. But also, what's cool about Super Scroll is you're getting so much value because then you're getting Moonstone's ability to redo that on your side. Like...
Yeah, is it like an auto onslaught on the Moonstone, basically?
Yeah, it goes nuts, bro. It goes wildly nuts. Super Scroll Truthers from 2023, 22 are rising
First
up.
card, buddy. That's the first card I bought with tokens.
Oh, man. Blast to the past. All right, we got 2 more cards to talk about for this season. And we head to our next one in Bullseye. Bullseye is a 3/3. A lot of changes on this guy. 3/3. Activate. Discard all cards that cost 1 or less from your hand and afflict that many different enemy cards with -2 power. And this is an interesting one and definitely one worth talking about. Activate being a little bit of a scary word there, but also we've seen it work really well in discard, clearly, because that's what you want to do. So we have some boom or bust potential there. Alex, what do you think of Bullseye?
What I think is, I want to say something stupid. Do I have your permission?
You usually get one a Snapchat, so I would. Yes.
All right. Here it is. Run like the wind, Bullseye.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I just watched Toy Story like yesterday.
Buddy, I watch Toy Story nonstop. It's one of my kids' favorite ones. But I will say, okay, Cozy, this might be where, all right, I like hot taking. I like hot taking. There's no problem with it. I'm up for it. I'm up for being wrong. I think I'm a little lower on this card than most people.
That's how I am too.
And I'm ready for it. I'm going to say I have an upper, I don't want to say an upper limit of, but I'm going with a flat 3 here. Because I think that it could potentially be good. But as an activate and some of the more awkward plays, because like I know people are interested in Swarm. And, I think there's opportunities there. But if you got a handful of Swarms, are you really not going to play them all the time? You know what I mean? And so I think that the play pattern is interesting. However, I have some reservations. I'm going 3 stars here. I'd like to be wrong. I know people are high on Bullseye. But for me, he might not be riding with the wind.
Oh, man, I thought I was going to have the hot take. Same here. I got about 3. I think... And like, I feel like I was saying 3, just like save our butts. Like, I don't know, it could be even 2.5. I feel like activate. First of all, we've seen it time after time when they adjust a card like they did from 4 to 3. It's not because they wanted to do that. I think they needed to do that. Activate can hurt this card a lot. But on top of that, just like trying to make this work with all the synergies that you're already having one game plan with discard, it could be a bit weird and a bit awkward. There are going to be games where he feels really game changing and ones where there's other options and other things that you want to accomplish. I honestly think that this card is not going to be... I think he's going to be a fun card. He's going to fit that role of Gambit in a way. And that we're not over here giving Gambit a 5-star. Like I just wouldn't give Gambit today a 5-star, right? So it's really cool and it does a lot. But also in all the games across the board, I don't think it's going to continually give you success. And if it did, it would not be a 3/3, right? That's at least my opinion. Clearly, he's a 3/5 without even trying, with most cards. But there are some... This one could be our quicker review. We don't need to go into minutes of talking about it. But there are about 3 or 4 that clearly like it, And at the top of the list, you mentioned Swarm. Obviously, scoring his way up there. And something like Dawkin. Those are the ones where I think, have a chance to go high.
Yeah, I think those are the 3 worth talking about, to be honest with you, Cozy. And like Dawkin, I mean, talk about another card that is on your docket list for, you got to just say, yeah, I think obviously targeting the shard with Dawkin is just pure gravy. That's been a card where it's been surprisingly challenging at times to like, wow, I got this stupid shard. I got to hit it somehow, right? Bullseye does that. I think that Scorn's a very natural one. Just hitting Scorn with Bullseye means that you're getting a 1/7 straight up, or 3/7, I should say. And that's good. You take that, -2 on their side, +2 on your side, plus the actual Bullseye himself. You take those, that's not too bad. But I'm starting to think that like the new discard shells might feature Victoria Hand. And if you feature Victoria Hand in those discard shells, I think it's unlikely you're going to want to just let Swarms run up. And you're going to want to play those Swarms because they're just too valuable. The only time I see you running those Swarms and using Bullseye in that manner could potentially be in like an Ajax deck. But I don't know if that ever gets there because the way it's worded, it says afflict that many different enemy cards, which would mean that it would individually target cards, almost like a hazmat hits everyone. Bullseye is going to try and hit individual pieces. I think that's kind of interesting and could potentially be something interesting in Ajax. I don't know what that deck looks like right now because I'm still in like the planning phase, but I don't know. Bullseye feels to me like maybe it might be the miss of the month, to be honest with you. And you're right. You said it before. They don't go from 4 to 3 because they're nerfing the card. You know what I mean? That's not what happens.
But for those that are looking forward to it, it is going to be fun. So enjoy that. Like if that's why you play Snap, which a lot of us do, then great. He will be fun in that light. I thought an interesting thing to bring up at least was X23 and the idea of being able to get rid of her on a turn 4 technically because you got to activate the card. Is interesting because you instantly get strong value there. But you're holding on to that X23. I mean, I think it's we've tried to make X23 work before, and in the Wolverine Proxima Midnight where you send everything is kind of fun and it does work a little bit. Could get some synergy here with Bullseye. But glad to see we agree here. Kind of just not both jumping up and down for a card that I think people heading into this season were kind of going crazy for.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that works out. One more card to talk about, Ares, the God of War. And funny enough, his ability is like the game of war. If you played card games as a kid, 4-cost, 6 power card on reveal. Compare the power of the top 3 cards of both decks. If your total is higher, plus 6 power. So he's a 4/12. And boom or bust, as I like to call it. This guy's got a clear and obvious home, and we also have a 12 power 4-cost card. Alex, what do you think?
I like him. I want to give kudos to Second Dinner, whoever designed this card, because I think it captures the flavor of war, which is very fitting for someone named Ares. I think that this was one of the cards that we really needed to see the trailer for. Also, kudos for releasing the trailer earlier than usual. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh, right? Yeah, no kidding. But with Ares, we found out that we don't see the cards that are being tested for the power. We do see the deck kind of come up and stuff like that. We see the power levels, which you could insinuate what kind of cards might be present based on oh, they have 30 power in the top 3 cards. They got a bunch of chonky boys, right? You kind of know that. Or they have 4 power or whatever. You can make some assumptions, but you don't see the cards. Man, I like it. I'm going 4 stars here because I think that how do you just shake your head at 4/12 power? And if you're the natural place, Cozy, it's obviously Surtur, right? Is gonna use it. Now Surtur took a bit of a beating because of the nerfs that got to Scar and Surtur itself. But you're playing chonky boys. You're playing big cards. That's what that deck does. And we've seen time and time again that all a card needs to be successful in Marvel Snap is one really good home, right? And I think Ares will do that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as he is pigeonholed even more so than someone like Victoria Hand. But he's just good stats, man. It is. It's either the Scar decks, as we just talked about. Maybe Hela. I think Hela's an interesting card that you could play with him because it's okay, you have a lot of big power in there anyway, and then he comes out, does his on review. It's interesting. It's definitely that was the other home that I haven't seen anybody even bring up, and I think it should get more attention.
No, I'd not thought of Hela, and you're right, because you're running a lot of big cards in that deck, right? I wonder if this card could be playable in something like a Black Knight deck. Yeah. Because Black Knight tends to carry a lot of big cards, discard something big, Ghost Rider. Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe you're right. This card could be interesting there. But then again, you wouldn't want to discard this particular card. Yeah. Right? But then again, it's an on reveal. So.
And does he fit into the shell? Does he fit into the tight shell? I think Scar is obviously the more clear play. But yeah, I think he's just a good card. 3.5, 4. It's tough because it's plug and play ability, but the cards that he's in is going to be great. The decks that he's in is going to be solid. And so, very straightforward card. Not crazy stuff to talk about outside the big cards that were Coal Obsidian and Crossbones. And you guys know the drill. We just had the Scar Surtur season, right?
And one thing worth mentioning as well is they did make a change where no longer is Kang in the spotlight. So that was something that was revealed in the video. I was actually sad, man. I was kind of hoping that Kang was going to get the rework. Clearly, it's not happening. And instead of Kang, we're getting Miss Marvel, who, we got Moonstone. We got some ongoing stuff happening. So maybe she'll be better because right now she's a little ho-hum. So, yeah.
Agreed. All right, man. Well, it's that point of the episode where we rank all of the cards from worst to best in the season. And then obviously we will hold ourselves accountable like we're about to do on Alex's side of the Snapchat. Worst card this season goes to
Bullseye.
Bullseye. I agree. 100%. Bullseye, worst card of the season. Next up,
Moonstone.
Moonstone. I'm going to go with Moonstone. Ares is right there. They're just different. Yeah, different. We'll have to see. I think, Moonstone, then Ares. We're close, man. Moonstone, then Ares. Yep.
And then Victoria Hand, and then Iron Patriot.
So that's where we flip. I got Iron Patriot on top, Victoria Hand right after that.
No, that's what I have too. Number 1's Iron Patriot for me.
Oh, okay. I thought at the beginning you didn't give him a 5-star. In fact,
you did this before. You did this last month where you actually ranked a card higher than your 5-star. I'm doing the same this month. I like Victoria Hand 5 stars, but I think that Iron Patriot's technically better.
Oh my gosh. I think I
Not
convinced
to make
you.
it any more confusing.
I think I convinced you, Alex. That's what I think happened. Iron Patriot card of the month, and he's a season pass card, so he's going to be relatively, when I say relatively easy to get, you can get it with the best card in the game, guys, the credit card. Go Second Dinner. Yay. All right, guys. Well, if you want to go and check out our other subjects, Snap and Rivals season close, we're going to talk about our final rankings, our favorite cards at every single cost, and then the Snapchat mailbag. Have a good one, guys. Have a great one. Happy New Year. To the next one. Happy snapping.